Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
Hello, Aki. You are muted, my friend.
That's good because I was doing a British accent by accident again. Hello, Steph.
I do love it when you do a British accent. Which one was it?
Yes, I was like, hello. It was
Hello.
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 Hello, Steph.
Hello.
Yes, welcome, listeners, to Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast. It's my vague James Mason voice, I guess. Yes.
That'll do it every time.
It will do it every time. Yeah, you're watching you're watching and listening to a very special episode of Set Phasers in which we come to you on a Sunday in order to get through enough episodes to get ready for season 3. So today's date is Stardate 20927.4, and we will be discussing season 2, episodes 7 and 8.
And how many weeks are we? What's the countdown to
We
season
are
3?
Season 3 will start in hold on. There's an alarm starting and stopping.
So much fun.
It's a fun time here.
It is indeed a fun time.
Season 3 will begin October 15th, I believe, or 13th, if I'm not mistaken. So we have 2 Fridays remaining.
Oh, it's a lot.
Yes, it is a lot. 2 Fridays remaining, and after this, 6 episodes to cover. So we'll be doing one more bonus episode. Oh, there it is. Yeah, okay. No one needs to hear that. It's Sunday. I'm relaxing. I've got my hot cup
Chilling.
of Set Phasers brew.
What brew do we have today?
It's coffee. It's Klingon coffee.
Are you feeling like Janeway? I feel like you can either be Janeway or you can be Picard.
I'm Janewaying for sure. I'm a
Janewaying.
coffee drinker. I let my hair down and I drink some coffee because I'm Janeway. That's right.
Do the hair flick.
Yeah.
All right, Aki. Right. Let's run it down.
Let's run it down. It's time to run it down. Can you run it down for me? What just happened? Can you run it down for me? Can you run it down? We shall run it down. All right. Episode 7 is called Light and Shadows. It begins with a voiceover from Michael Burnham, and she's saying that her mother Amanda told her that the mysteries of life are 3 parts: birth, life, and death, the past, the present, and the future. But the question they ask themselves now is whose future and why? And where is the Red Angel from? What future? What does it need to know? And so far, they know that Spock would probably know because he predicted these 7 signs in the Red Angel several months before it happened. But he had a mental break, and his shuttle disappeared in the Mutara sector. And so Michael has asked Pike she can go to Vulcan and speak with her parents, particularly her mother, because she suspects Amanda might know more about where Spock is than Sarek. And Pike gives her leave. He says, go ahead and let me know what happens. Meanwhile, Disco is going to stay around the planet of Kaminar and check out the debris field. And there's like a sort of leftover radiation from the Red Angel event that happened at the end of the last episode rather. So Michael takes off on the bridge. They're talking about what they're seeing. There's a lot of tachyon radiation and particulates. But Tilly says that the readings are off the charts, as in there's no power source that they know of that could create this amount of tachyon radiation, a technology that has not yet been invented. And so Tyler arrives. Remember, he's the liaison to Section 31, sort of sticking out like a sore thumb on the ship because he has some pretty messy history with everyone. But he asks, "Hey, where's Michael? Why did she leave? Where is she going?" And Pike says, "Hey, I'm not going to tell you, man. This is she went to do some stuff. She's taking some leave, and I don't need to tell you." And he's like, "Well, listen, I'm the liaison, and if she's looking for Spock, then you got to tell me because I got to tell Section 31." And he shows him his Section 31 badge, and Pike looks at the badge and he says, "Mr. Tyler, the chair outranks the badge."
I like
So
that moment. That was
it's great.
cool.
It's like take a seat. Actually, Pike has some pretty good lines throughout these two episodes. He's really coming into his own.
Because he's been challenged recently. He had Saru who squared up to him, who's a good foot taller than him,
Yeah,
which he
Saru is.
handled
Yeah, well,
well.
he
And
doesn't seem intimidated. Yeah,
and he did have a word with Saru privately afterward and said, that's not going to happen again.
yeah,
But when it was Lorca, it was very public in front of the crew.
yeah, exactly. Lorca needed to assert his dominance in a public theater, whereas Pike is willing to let people sort of hoist themselves by their own petards, as it were. Oh, no. Okay, so that's enough levity. So the ship is trying to get close to this radiation. It's kind of got there's like a temporal rift happening here, and the ship gets a little too close, and they actually are starting to get pulled into the rift. And as they're looking around the ship, weird things are happening, like things that happened 30 seconds ago are repeating in like ghostly images. It shows Pike once again on the chair, talking smack. So they have to actually pull back. There's a rift in space time, and so in order to get their probe, their like readings close enough, because they send a probe in, but the probe just gets completely lost. Pike is willing to pilot a shuttle. He and Tyler will pilot a shuttle nearer, and then get more readings off of a second probe. Right? Apparently, he was a test pilot, and so he's prepared for this kind of crazy business. So Pike and Tyler are walking to the shuttle, and Pike sort of lets on that he's not super comfortable with Tyler because of the whole Volk thing and, being an enemy and maybe not trusting Tyler. And and Ash basically says, "Sorry, but there's no way to get rid of him, sir." Speaking of Volk, and Pike says, "I know the feeling," and then walks on ahead, which I also thought was a nice Pike moment. He's just good with the low key quips. So Michael is arriving on Vulcan. She managed to get permission to land at Sarek's residence as his daughter, but not officially as a Starfleet officer. She has a brief flashback.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. I don't know if you wanted the flashback.
I did.
I didn't tell you that you needed
wait,
this stuff.
you didn't, and now I
Hold
can't.
on, let me set you up for it. She arrives and has a quick flashback.
There it is. I have so many sound effects; they're hard to find.
I know you've got dozens. You've got a veritable cornucopia.
Indeed.
In keeping with
About
the season.
2 or 3 dozen actually.
Yeah, that's well. I was not prying.
In fact, you made most of them.
Well, no. We need to get into that. Okay, so Michael arrives on Vulcan. She has a brief flashback. Hello. She has a brief flashback about the day, once again, when she met Amanda. She was brought home by Sarek after her parents were killed, and Amanda introduces her to Spock. And she has a wonderful memory as she's passing the like 3-dimensional chess set of her and Spock. And she's trying to do the Vulcan salute and she can't do it. And she's laughing at herself, and Spock is confused. He's like, "How do you laugh at yourself because you're making something an error?" And she says, "I don't know, it's just funny." And he says, "Emotions confuse me." And then Michael says, "They confuse me too." And then they put their hands together and he shows her how to do the Vulcan salute. It's very sweet. So sweet. Okay, so then Amanda's like, "It's so good that you're back home." And she shows Michael Sarek, who apparently has been for several days entering the Tok'mar meditation trance, which apparently is legendarily, it can lead lost souls back home. And so he's trying to get in contact with Spock through this manner. And Amanda, it seems like she's sort of lying to Michael, and Michael is kind of onto her. She's like, "You've always told me the truth, and that's how I can tell you're lying." Because Amanda says, "Oh, I don't know where Spock is. He could be anywhere. And even if I did know where he was, I wouldn't turn him in to be convicted of a crime he surely did not commit." And Michael says, "You've got to know he's my brother, and I love him too, and I'm the one who can help him." And Amanda's like, "No, I don't know about that." And then Michael says, "Listen, I know that you're lying. You've got to trust me to help Spock. Otherwise, Section 31 is going to come get him, and who knows what's going to happen." And then Amanda says ominously, "Well, Spock is not as you remember him. Ooh.
Mm.
Yes. Okay. So back on Disco, Pike and Tyler are in a shuttle, and they're inside the rift, but they're trying to. There's like an aperture in the middle of the rift. It's almost like a black hole, and it's kind of sucking things in. So they're told to avoid the aperture, get as close as they can. But as they're approaching, they start to experience more temporal distortions, and so they're told to back off. But one distortion in particular is Pike looks behind him and sees him, and ooh, listen to that neck crack. Hello.
Sorry.
No,
I thought I was on
sorry.
mute there.
I thought I was on mute. Sorry. Uh, one particular distortion Pike sees is him and Tyler facing off behind them in the like sort of like storage area of the shuttle, and Pike is screaming something maybe in like Klingon, and Pike has Tyler is screaming something in Klingon, and Pike has his phaser fixed on him and he shoots Tyler, and he's sort of confused by this. Meanwhile, he and Tyler in real time are sort of like, oh, what's going on? So they pull back and they try to get the probe launch, which they are able to do, and then they are hit by a temporal shockwave. And the shuttle is lost in the rift. Discovery is unable to find it on its sensors. And so Saru has...
It's what now?
It's sensors.
Sensors.
We're not able to pick them up on sensors.
Sensors.
You know, on Discovery, they say sensors. They don't
do.
say sensors. That's
Sensors.
really early 90s.
I still love it because it's totally a thing.
Yes, absolutely.
It's fun.
I feel like, yeah, TNG...
Listeners, if you're watching and you haven't watched Lower Decks, there's an episode where there's a whole little thing about sensors versus sensors.
Yeah, because everyone
It's
calls
rather
them
amusing.
sensors. No one calls them
Indeed.
sensors. That's ridiculous.
No.
Okay, why would you do that?
Why would you?
Even 200 years from now. Saru is acting captain, essentially. He's taking over. He's the first officer. And so he says, listen, we're changing this from a science mission now to a rescue mission. And he tasks everyone to figure out what's going on. And, Tilly tells him that, okay, the radiation inside of that rift, that tachyon radiation is deadly in 5 hours. And so they have 5 hours to figure something out. But inside of the rift, time is apparently whipped up like something in a blender. And so it's past and present and future all in a jumble. It's completely non-linear, fractured. And Saru suggests, well, we know one person who's certainly unaffected by time anomalies, Mr. Paul Stamets, who once helped them last time, Mud, trying to take over the ship.
God love mud.
God love mud. I would get that as a bumper sticker, honestly. Just God love mud. No one would know what it means. Also, I'm not crazy, I'm mud. Okay, so back on Vulcan, Amanda does take Michael to like a sort of a hidden cave. I think it turns out to be sort of like a burial chamber, where she's been keeping Spock. And we finally see Spock. He's got a beard and he's hot. He's hot as hell. And but he's also completely sort of out of it. He's in like sort of a fugue state. He's mumbling things over and over to himself, numbers and the like first directives of logic and parts of Alice in Wonderland. She's just completely in a dissociative state. And apparently he's been like that for 2 days. And he's been drawing the angel on the cave walls. And Michael says, listen, we got to get him to a doctor. And Amanda's like, absolutely not. Because they would turn him in. And she says, I have the right as an ambassador's wife to claim diplomatic immunity. And so she won't turn him in. And she and Michael are fighting about this. And then dun dun dun, Sarek walks in. Oh yeah, hit him with it.
I'm always ready for a dun dun dun.
I know you're always ready for a dun dun dun. Sarek walks in and he's like, what if I decide he's got to be turned in? Oh snap. So let's cut back to the shuttle. In the shuttle, they're going, it's like all crazy and time is all whipped up and weird and things are happening. And so Pike gives Tyler an order to vent the plasma in like particular signals, like vent it and burn it in 3 short bursts over a certain period of time. I forget exactly what the time things were, because let's admit it, I
thought it was 5 seconds.
It might be 5 seconds. Was it 3 bursts over 5 seconds?
Think so.
Great. Well,
remember my numbers.
Remember my numbers.
Oh yeah.
And on Discovery, Tilly and Sandwich are trying to work out the problem, because basically the idea is if time is completely non-linear within the rift, then in the mycelial network, time is all happening all at once. So it might be able to plot all of the time across the 4-dimensional grid of the mycelial network. Don't think about it too hard. Just go back to Vulcan, where Amanda and Spock are now having an argument about whether or not whose fault is what. It's just it is a familial argument about the raising of their children.
Oh,
Yes.
Amanda and Sarek.
Yes. What did I say? Spock.
Spock.
Amanda
Spock.
and Sarek
Spock.
are having an apartment. And
Spock.
Amanda and Sarek are having an argument, and Amanda's basically saying like how she had to safeguard their children because they were both Vulcan and not Vulcan, and they were on both sides of the looking glass, like Alice in Wonderland, and she had to prepare them for feelings of extreme disorientation. But nonetheless, this is also where we find out that Spock suffered from a learning disability called the Latak Tarai, which we learn more about later. But basically, it made him unable to sort of work things out as quickly as Vulcans. It's like a spatial and numerological dysphagia.
Dyslexia in
It's
Vulcan.
a dyslexia, sure. A Vulcan dyslexia, but like affecting your logic and your idea of spatial forwards and backwards ideas, whatever. And at that moment, Spock recites some Alice about the nature of madness and how one knows when one is mad. And that was right after Sarek had said, "You give them this book about chaos." Anyway, Sarek decides, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have Michael deliver Spock to Section 31. And before everyone can get up in arms, he explains, because listen, Michael, if she doesn't follow her duty, her Starfleet career will once again be in jeopardy. And they will hunt Spock down like a fugitive. And he becomes slightly emotional in saying he's not prepared to lose both of their children in one day. And so I think that kind of seals the deal. He's, a Vulcan. Back on the shuttle, things are going not great. And just when things seem like they're have sort of peaked at a leveled out at not great, suddenly a huge weird probe thing attacks the ship. It's the probe they sent in like 30 seconds ago or whatever from their own shuttle, and it's back and it looks very different. It's been totally upgraded. It's got weird like tentacle limbs and stuff, and it looks like something out of the Matrix. It looks like one of the Sentinels from the Matrix. And so that's not a great sign, and the ship is now being like rocked by that. Meanwhile, Burnham is bringing Spock into Section 31. I did manage to find out the assignation of their ship, which I wondered if was a little Easter egg, because it is the NCIA 93.
Oh, that's funny.
So Spock is sedated, and Leland tells Michael, it's like Michael, Leland, and Giorgio in a room, and some doctors. And can you hear the siren? Should I wait?
Give it a minute.
The old Raptagino.
Oh, that's loud. That's a loud one.
That was going straight to the hospital. It's right there.
Yeah,
See it?
hear that,
See
yeah.
it? Okay. Making the left turn down to the emergency room.
I hope it's not serious.
Scene. There you go. Okay, so where was I? Yes. Michael comes in, and Leland, who people may recall, is the de facto leader of Section 31 and the captain of the Section 31 ship, is explaining to Michael, like, listen, I just want to help Spock as well. We are not sure that he killed anyone. We just want to help him get his mind back in order, and that's what this procedure is going to do. It's going to help sort out his mind. It'll take several hours. Why don't you go get some rest? We're headed to Starbase. What does he say? 23? There's a lot of Starbase 23. That's the next episode. There's a lot of Starbases to remember in these two episodes.
Oh, that's right. The next one was 11.
Mm-hmm.
He numbers.
Yeah, numbers. And so he asked Michael, is there anything they should know about Spock's mind? And she mentions the Latak Tarai, and that's where Leland sort of is familiar with this Latak Tarai situation. So she leaves Michael. Michael is with Spock, and Leland leaves for a while. And she sort of like tries to speak to him. And he says she thinks of the numbers one more time. And she realizes the Latak Tarai, maybe the numbers he's been saying are backwards, are inversed because of his dysphagia, his dyslexia. Okay, so back on the disco.
What I do.
That's what I do.
It's a real
I think
thing.
actually, when it's numbers, it's not technically dyslexia. I think
Dyspraxia, I think.
I thought it was dyscalculia.
Oh, who knows? But I do
I
it.
don't know. Listen, hey,
I invert my
potato,
numbers.
dyspraxia.
Fun
Yes,
fact. Do you want to know a fun
yes.
mathematical fact?
Don't threaten me with a good time.
Well, if you invert numbers, the difference is always divisible by 9.
Say, oh, the rule of 9. Yes, I've heard of this.
You have heard of
Yes,
this.
of
So, for
course
instance,
I've heard of it.
81 and
Yes,
19.
of course.
Well, I actually don't know what the difference is, but whatever it is, it divides by 9, as an example. So,
You just dysfraxed there because you meant 81 and 18.
yeah.
You said 81 and 19. As evidence of
Did
your...
I?
You did. Well, listen, but you've got it right.
So, for instance, the difference between 81 and 18 is
Yes.
63, and divide that by 9, and you have 7.
Well, hello,
Boom.
Dolly.
Do it with any number you like, and
Great.
that is the case.
Well, I will. I expect to have a very exciting Sunday night after this.
Please do.
Oh, I will. Back on the Discovery, they're able to find Pike's signal within the array, within the sort of the rift, the weird field, because one of the science officers also went to test pilot school and knows this signal that test pilots use to help people find them within debris. And so Stamets is trying to calculate the trajectory. Unfortunately, said bursts are appearing at different times in time, right? So Tilly says one happened like 3 hours ago, one happened 8 seconds ago, one happened 10 minutes ago. And Stamets is like, yes, of course, nonlinear temporal progression is complicated. But if the signals happen at different times and they use the mycelial network as a control, they're able to find out where the ship is. And then Stamets realizes the ship is drifting towards the aperture where they will lose them forever within the time rift. Meanwhile, on the shuttle, Pike and Tyler have activated the shield because they're trying to stave off this sentinel weird thing because it's trying to dig into the ship. And when they scan it, they find out that the probe, remember, they sent out maybe a minute before everything went completely pear-shaped, has now aged 500 years. Oh, excuse me. Has now aged 500 years. And
when this
yes.
is a podcast, by the way, you have your special. There's a special effect that I put on this, and it's like super reverby and like it's great.
Well,
fun.
listeners,
I know you don't know that because you probably don't listen to it, but if you are listening, that's what happens.
500 years. Just in case you need another take of that. So the tentacles break through the ship and they're attacking everything, and they try to attack Pike, and Tyler saves him, but then they attack Tyler, and then Pike has to save Tyler, and he has a flashback at that moment because what he didn't see was the tentacles holding Tyler down. So he shoots the tentacles and also hits Tyler, but the tentacles die. But one piece of the tentacle flies over to the control port and starts like breaching the data controls of the ship, of the little shuttle. And meanwhile, Stamets sees that this is about to happen, that they're about to drift into the aperture. And so he and Tilly are rushing to the transporter room. He says, Tilly, you got to transport me into the ship in the middle of the time rift. And Tilly's like, I don't know. It seems weird. It seems dangerous. If you're off by even the slightest bit, you're dead. You're dead. You're dead. You're dead. And he goes, oh, Tilly, trust the math. Also, there's more to that quote, which I'll save for quotable moments.
Moments.
I love that. It's like you're in the room. So he tells Tilly to trust math. He transports. He's over to the shuttle. He's able to get the shuttle to exit the anomaly, but the probe is still attached and it's still accessing the data core. And as it gets closer to Disco, it starts accessing the data core of Discovery. And then they run out of plasma because they vented all that plasma to make the signal. And so now the probe is dragging them back into the rift and towards the aperture. Dun, dun, dun. Well, go for it. Is that stressful enough for you? Well, too bad, because we're going back to Section 31/NCIA 93/whatever. And Giorgio runs up to Michael and says, I've disabled all the cameras and we have exactly 60 seconds. And here's what's about to happen. The machines that they're about to use on Spock are Terran technology. And what they do, they're memory extractors and they will destroy your brother's mind. So you have the option now of hitting me, getting in there, saving Spock, and getting away, or you're going to lose your chance now. But this is the moment. And Michael says, "Why are you doing this?" And at first, Michael says, "You're doing this out of the goodness of your heart," and Georgiou says, "No, out of the goodness of yours." Ha ha ha! But then she explains, like, "You get Spock, you look good. Leland looks bad, which makes me look good." And so there is a Machiavellian layer to her decision, but they do have a fight, and Michael is able to overwhelm.
Little wink with it.
There's a little wink, but then they really fight for real.
Yeah. And there's like a few
yeah. There's a lot of counters and stuff like that. It was pretty great. And then Michael goes in. She's able to save Spock by knocking out the doctors. She makes it to her own shuttle, and they take off. Okay, so Michael and Spock are in the wind. Back in Disco, they can't get a transporter lock on Pike and Stamets and Tyler from Discovery because of all the interference. And there's like 34 seconds until they're being dragged into the portal. And so Pike says, Stamets, can you figure out where we are manually and set up the transporter coordinates? And Stamets says, well, yeah, sure. Of course, I think so. He says, do it. And then send it to Discovery. Meanwhile, I'm going to set the self-destruct. Meanwhile, Tyler is trying with like main power and like some sort of implement to just smash the part of the probe that's in their like control deck to pieces. And so they set the self-destruct. They're able to transport away. The ship blows up and they're back on the ship. In the meanwhile, on the ship, once they're back on the bridge, something very strange happens to Ariam. She's watching the computer. She's watching like the feed of the probe remotely trying to access the data on the Discovery. And then her like eyes flash red, and then these 3 little red dots flash in her eyes. Scary, scary. But I guess we'll come back to that later. Meanwhile, on Section 31, Michael has staged her rescue, and they are able to get away. And Leland tries to like chew out Georgiou. He's like, "How could you let her get away?" Blah blah blah. And Georgiou says, "Ha ha ha ha, Leland, you need me, so don't act so tough, because you need to keep Burnham from finding out." And Leland's like, "From finding out what, pray tell?" And she says, "From finding out that you're responsible for the death of her parents." Pike goes to thank the crew, and Tilly says, "Hey, don't thank the crew so fast, because there is now a shockwave coming from the shuttle explosion, and it's going to destroy us." So Pike tells Detmer to get them out of there, and they warp out just before the explosion. Meanwhile, Starfleet is going to be on the search for Burnham and Spock, and you see like a bunch of Section 31 ships moving through an asteroid belt, and then of course hidden in one of the asteroids are Spock and Burnham. And Burnham finally is able to like look at the coordinates by flipping the numbers that Spock is saying to the other side, and she finds a planet based on those coordinates. It is the planet of Talos 4. And Burnham sets a course to max warp. Talos 4, baby! For those of you who are Super Trek nerds, you know what that means.
Well, you also get a clue, I think, at the beginning of the episode. Do you get a clue at the episode?
Is that a clue? It's enormous. It's not a clue.
It's not like, a clue. It's like, here, you need this information.
Yeah, this is about to be what it is. Okay, well, first let me throw these papers. Hold on, everyone. I know this is a big moment for all of us. Paper throw.
Maybe I'm going to get a sound effect for that, because I feel like it's not effective as a sound effect when you actually do it.
Listen, even I'm critical of, I don't know how to throw papers. I don't know how to celebrate, period. I'm not a celebrator. I'm a calculator. Okay. Okay. So, episode 8, If Memory Serves. And I love the title of this episode because it's got like 3 meanings. Ha ha ha.
Does it?
Yeah. Well, I won't
if memory serves, as in like.
Well, we.
I can't think of 3 meanings. I could think of 2.
Well, I'll get to it. I'll come to it. I'm taking some notes. Okay, so we get the previously on Star Trek in the original series Star Trek font, and you get like a quick overview of what many people may not remember or have never experienced, the pilot episode of Star Trek, the original series. Yes?
What? It was terrible.
Yeah, it was a pretty awful. I mean, there were cool
things about it. It never got made.
It.
Star Trek almost never got made because it was so bad.
Well, Star Trek actually, the original series never had great ratings over the
No.
3 years that it was out. It only actually became popular in syndication.
Mm.
So yeah, but ugh, I'm glad they didn't go with their original plan in the pilot. It gives us a few great things. No one really ever cared about Captain Pike, but he was all right in that first episode. Number one stands out. Before seeing Discovery, she stood out as like a cool character on the show, on the ship. And otherwise, like Spock is an alien, but he doesn't have any real interesting characteristics whatsoever. And the bridge looks weird. Anyway, I'm not gonna
Anyway.
get into a whole thing about
Yep.
the
Yep.
pilot. But you get to see the pilot, and in that pilot, before there was a James T. Kirk, there was a Captain Pike running the Starship Enterprise, and he heads down to a planet in the Talos system, and he meets. I mean, I don't know if I can describe a whole other episode to describe this episode, but it's in short, he meets some aliens with really giant heads who have telepathic powers, and they're able to make things seem as they are not. And he falls in love with a woman who turns out to be a projection of these three aliens who had found a woman who was near death and made her appear good. But then they try to trap Pike down there so that he can mate with the woman that they've created, whose name is Vina. But then Pike sees through their illusion, and instead of killing them, he decides he's going to find a way to work with them, but they say he can't take Vina with him because she can only exist near the three super minds, and so he has to leave. And that is the sad and tortured story of the Star Trek pilot.
I feel like they made it too complicated.
I
Good
mean,
job.
yeah,
Telosians.
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 It's definitely a pilot episode, and there's a lot of things wrong with it. And I think one of the triumphs of Star Trek Discovery's second season is that they were able to mine that first episode for all it was worth to give us this interesting aspect, not only of like where Spock goes to get healed and various other things and the cool thing that happens at the end, but also we get to peer into Pike's mind, and now he develops some depth as a character because he has this woman he left behind. We never see Pike again after that first episode. I don't think he's even mentioned in subsequent Star Treks.
No.
Maybe as a passing remark in like later franchises or something.
I don't think he's mentioned until the movies, is he?
I think that might be true. You mean the reboots?
Yeah. The reboots.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if maybe in earlier like in TNG or DS9 or Voyager, if he's like mentioned. You know, they just like throw him up there, or like Enterprise or something. But I can't think of a single instance in which that would have happened.
I can't think of one.
It's hard to discern between what I know and what I have read in nonfiction accounts of Starfleet. But
Things
that's
blur.
neither here nor there. I may or may not have a book of the history of Starfleet, written as if it's real. Okay, so that's the backstory. We go from that Pike, and they use the original footage, which was kind of cute, and to the Pike, our Pike, our Anson Mount. Is that his name?
Yes.
Anson Mount Pike. He's on the bridge. He's sort of staring out there, and he's like, "There's no word from Michael. I hope she finds Spock before Section 31." And meanwhile, in Section 31, Leland is getting sort of chewed out by the Admiralty, and they're saying, "How could you let Michael escape? This is a further sign of her penchant for mutiny." He takes all the full responsibility for the security lapse, and a sign that he's sort of like kowtowing to Giorgio's wishes. The Admiralty underscore how vital finding Spock and getting what's in his head out is to figuring out what's going on with these red signals. Giorgio makes the suggestion that they set a Federation-wide alert to look out for the shuttle, but not to tell Discovery about it, because she feels that Michael's connection with people on Discovery would make things complicated. And the Admiralty likes that. And so they're like, "What other ideas do you have?" And then Leland starts talking like, "We were asking Giorgio, actually." So you can see that Leland is not exactly enjoying this. But the Federation does, the Admiralty says like, well, yeah, they keep mentioning this control, which is like a computer threat analysis thing that allows them to sort of like foresee or predict or calculate the likelihood of various things. And so the threat analysis from control about like Michael and Spock is pretty high. And then Giorgio has to inform Pike and Discovery that Michael has escaped, but they said, like, "We're going to look for her. We need you to keep combing that debris field." You hear their motorcycle? Because
Now it's gone.
great. We need you to keep combing that debris field and finding out if you can find any of the like remnants of that probe that came back after 500 years, and figure out what's going on there, what it wanted from your computers. Um, and so they're sort of like, it's a way to keep them out of the search for Michael, and also to keep an eye on them. And then after that's over, Pike talks to Tyler, and he's like, he wants to know the truth about Tyler and Michael, which Tyler relates to him in sort of like antiseptic terms. He's like, "Oh, I loved her, and she was kind of into me, and then I betrayed her. I was not the man she thought I was, and things didn't work out. But we're 100% professional now, and I think Michael is great. May I be excused?" Essentially, is how that conversation goes. Meanwhile, Michael's on the shuttle, headed toward Talos 5. She's learning the history of Talos, which apparently is that there was a thriving populace down there, and then there was a huge nuclear war, and it killed most of the people, and there's a small remnant of the population that remains, and they have extremely strong psychogenic abilities. Uh, and also, travel in the Talos system is prohibited by Starfleet. Nonetheless, they arrive. And when they come out of warp, they are like around a black hole, and the ship is being basically ripped apart by the gravitational forces. And as Michael tries to reverse, Spock, who's like awake but still not really, is sort of nonverbal at this point. He's no longer mumbling, but he's not really making sense. He just stops her from being able to get the ship away, and then eventually just like kind of knocks her aside and sends the ship into the black hole. And when they get into the black hole, they find out that it was an illusion, and the planet of Talos 5 is spread out before them. There's a nice little subplot in this episode about Hugh Culber. As you remember, the Doctor was killed by Ash Tyler in season 1, and he is back from the mycelial network in real life, made out of real DNA from the Joseph's cocoon thing. And he is having a little bit of trouble adjusting to the fact that he's back alive. He feels very strange in his new body, even though he has memories of who he was. And the awkwardness is extended to the relationship between him and Stamets, because they were married. And then, as they're walking around, Culber sees Tyler walking down the ship's pathways, and definitely gives him sort of the evil eye. It's a little interesting. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Tyler finds out that the crew is still searching for Michael. They're staying in the debris field, but they're doing all this searching from a distance for Michael. And Tilly is searching through the sensors and the data, and she's turned up to. Excuse me. Tilly is searching through the sensors and the data, and there's no debris from the probe. That's right. You're right there. Something wrong with something wrong with your face.
Having a wee fit.
Okay.
Having a wee Tourette syndrome.
That's right. And there's no probe parts in the debris. Back on Talos 4, Michael lands the shuttle. She gets off to explore. She sees there's like a weird humming coming from all around, and these strange pulsating plants, and the humming is coming from the plants. And she's sort of looking at it seems completely deserted and desolate. But as she looks back down at the ship, she sees a woman, just a casual woman dressed in what I would describe as Star Trek, the original series, casual miniskirt onesie look. Walk up to the ship and walk into the ship. And so Michael confronts her with her phaser up, and she says, "Who are you?" And then Michael says, "Usually it's the one with the gun or the phaser who asks the questions." And she says that she's an old friend of Captain Pike's, and that Spock and her have been there before. And then she like looks up at into nothingness, and she says, they know that you're here, and they invite you to come down so they can help heal your brother." And that's when Michael realizes that Spock wanted her to bring him here because he knew that he could be healed. By the Telosians. So they beam down to the Telosians, and the woman introduced herself as Vina. Obviously, we know Vina, right, from the intro. And they beam down, just the two of them, leaving Vina in the shuttle. But when they get down to below the surface, Vina is also there. And Michael asks, "Is she real?" And then the Telosians show up with their big skulls, their pulsating brain sacs, and they say, "She is very real." And they're speaking telepathically, and then Michael's like, "Do you have to talk telepathically?" And they're like, "We can converse with you in the ancient way, if you so desire." They look over Spock and assess that he is experiencing time in a fluid form rather than linear, and that because he depends so much upon logic, he's having trouble interpreting what is going on around him. Just dancing to the music outside of my window. Yeah, just it was the.
I can give you some music if you like.
No, you don't really don't have to. I don't have to. I don't need to dance. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I danced. Uh, they say that they can show Michael what's going on inside of Spock's mind, but they need payment. Hmm. And the payment is what truly happened between Spock and herself, how she truly wounded him, and if she gives them that, then they will help show her what's in Spock's mind and heal him. And Michael agrees to that after some cajoling by Vina, but only if she can see what's in Spock's mind first. All right. So we get a flashback.
I'm with you there. Hang on. Oh shit.
Oh. Okay, we get a flashback
It's
to
a
the night
small
Michael.
desk. There's not a lot
It's
of
all right. You got a
space.
lot to do. Listen, I'm just looking at 4,000 lines of text here,
This is
written
a
by
giant
some sort of
thing
maniac who
in the
doesn't know how to
way.
spell. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. We
Mm.
both have issues. We're doing the best we can, Steph.
Yeah, we are.
Starfleet is a promise.
Mm.
All right. Okay, so it's the night Michael runs away, and it's the angel appearing to Spock, and he thought it was a dream, but it showed him where Michael was and that she would die from like this monster that would kill her. Not a monster, a beast that is probably native to Vulcan that would have killed her in the forest where she was running away to. And so Spock goes and tells his parents, and Michael is where she's supposed to be. So he realizes that it wasn't necessarily a dream, it was a premonition. And then a few months ago, while he was on the Enterprise, he gets these visions again, and he says, "Okay, I know what's going on." So he's led by these visions of the Red Angel once more to a desolate planet, and there he conducts a mind meld with it. Though it is humanoid inside of a weird suit, but he's able to do a mind meld with it, and he sees what he calls "quote the end," and all we see are like big metal things in space shooting basically planet exploding missiles at every recognizable planet in the Federation. And I guess it is extinction. It destroys everything. And Michael uh, basically like staggers from that memory, and she falls over and she sees Spock, and Spock is now lucid, and he says, "Now you see," and then she passes out. Well, that's pretty cool. It's first, Spock doing his thing. I enjoyed it. I'm into Spock. All right, Disco. Back on Disco, Hugh and Stamets. Stamets tries to bring in dinner, and he's kind of trying to help Hugh feel comfortable, but Hugh is definitely not having it. It's like it's supposed to be his favorite meal, but he says like, "I remember that it's my favorite meal, but eating it doesn't feel good. Like my senses don't feel the same." And that segues to him saying, "Maybe I don't feel the same about you, Stamets, Paul." And they have a little bit of an argument, and Paul knocks over a tray of dinner rolls, I believe, and then storms out. Meanwhile, in the ready room, Tyler and Pike are having it out, and Tyler's basically like, "Listen, you don't have to trust me per se, but I would say call off the search. You got to trust Michael to find Spock on her own and contact you, because any searching that Discovery does, you must believe that even beyond Tyler, you are being monitored by Section 31. And if you find her, you will only point a light at Michael." And then he departs, which I thought was indicative of the people who know Michael well. And as Pike is walking in the halls thereafter, Saru tells Pike that someone has sent unauthorized subspace transmissions from Discovery to an unknown location. 3 large bursts, which I believe he called petabytes or something, which maybe is like a terabyte of terabytes, I'm guessing. Who knows? Maybe it's a terabyte of terabytes of terabytes.
I will trust you.
Yeah, well, I will Google it later. Meanwhile, back on Talos, Michael wakes up. She's alone with Spock. They have a very awkward conversation in which she tries to apologize, and Spock is like, "I'm not here to absolve you. I'm here to communicate what I know to you so that we can save the human race." Or not the human race, all species in the Federation. But he did write, or I did write, that when he was connected to the Red Angel, he distinctly felt that what was inside the suit, even though it had like a quantum field around it through which he could not penetrate, that it was human thoughts and emotions coming from that suit, of feelings of loneliness and desolation. And so maybe now this humanoid in the Red Angel suit is in fact a human in the Red Angel suit. And that's pretty exciting. They continue to explore Spock's memories. And this next one is Spock remembering his time on Starbase, I want to say 5, when he is at the clinic. I think that's where he went to the clinic. and he's sort of like writing on the floor all these things and looks like parts of signals. A doctor comes in, and the doctor's like, well, the signals that you mentioned and that you've been writing about and talking about have just happened. How did you know these things would happen? And he goes, okay, so they weren't a hallucination. The Red Angel is real. And he basically says, like, okay, so I don't need to be here. I'm not losing my mind. I need to do something else altogether. And they say, like, well, we don't think leaving is a good option. In fact, some Section 31 agents are on their way to get you now. And so Spock uses the Vulcan nerve pinch to knock all three of them out and escape. And that's when Michael says, wait, you didn't kill anybody? What happened after this? Because basically everyone thinks you killed these three doctors in order to escape. And Spock has it. They have a very or an acrimonious relationship with one another. Spock says, even in my own mind, you question me. Do you see any murder here? So back on Disco, Hugh walks into the mess hall. He's silent. He approaches Tyler in anger. He knocks all the food off Tyler's table. He knocks the table over. He says, you killed me. Tyler tries to apologize. He says, it wasn't me. He says, oh, yeah, sure. So it was Vogue then? He goes, yeah, Vogue. And then Hugh says, so bring him out. And Tyler says, it doesn't work like that. And then Hugh tries to get Vogue to come out by starting a fight. He's like beating Tyler with a chair and pushing him and everything. And Saru is there with Tilly, and he holds everyone back. He says, no, this must play out. And so they fight, and there's a lot of pushing over tables and swinging around and grips and things and reversals and whatever. And then eventually they're sort of, I think Tyler is able to subdue the doctor. Not like subdue, like tap out, but basically prevent him from hitting him anymore. And the doctor says, I don't even know who I am anymore. And Tyler says, who do you think you're talking to?
It's a good moment.
I thought that was pretty great. Mm-hmm.
Did you want a dun dun dun?
I did, sort of. In case you were wondering,
that.
I don't know who I am anymore, and the feelings of memory not serving one's reality at present. That is the third entendre of the title, in my opinion.
Very good.
That's where I found.
Very good, Burmese.
Mm-hmm. I write in French three different colors of pen so that I can remember these points I'd like to make: red, black, and green. Okay, so Saru and Pike are talking thereafter, and Pike is sort of surprised that Saru let the fight happen. And Saru says basically that there's no precedent for this kind of situation. And so he decided to let it go because he was sort of making up it as he goes along. It's a great quote, which I'll use later. And Pike says, okay, well, I'll overlook it now because of the extenuating and like ridiculous circumstances that everyone is in. But this cannot happen anymore. We will not be sorting out our problems through violence, but through the formal code of conduct. And Saru agrees to that. Also, Pike points out that maybe Saru would have made a different call before he went through the Vaharai, if I'm saying that.
Puberty.
I'm remembering. That's right. Since he went through Kelpian puberty and became a warrior. So Pike leaves. Saru goes into his ready room, I think he pours himself a drink at this point. Anyway, maybe he's just looking down at the desk.
Was that
that was earlier. Yeah, he just poured himself a drink. Yeah. So he just goes into his ready room to chill. As he's looking down at his desk at some information, he gets a strange feeling. And when he looks over his shoulder, who should be standing there but Vina? And he's like, what? What?
So many different ones.
You know what? I'm not mad about it.
With it.
Yeah. And Vina basically explains they sort of talk about how they were forced to be apart, and Vina explains that the Telosians have given her a sort of like simulacrum is the word I want to use, simulacrum of Pike to spend her time with, even though they were deemed an unfit couple for what they wanted to if you watch the original series, I believe they wanted Pike to show up so they could create an Adam and Eve for the planet of Talos 4 and repopulate the planet, but they decided Pike was not a fitting match anyway. But they did fall in love in their brief incarceration together, and so she has a Pike that she keeps on the planet, and he says, like, I still think about you. And anyway, they exchange some emotional information, but also she says, the Telosian's ability to project illusions, across the galaxy is limited, but it does work. And there's someone I need you to see. And Pike turns around, and who should it be but Michael? So they're.
I didn't hit mute.
You didn't. I thought you were shocked. It was a dun 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 moment. Who should it be
Yeah.
but Michael?
I was holding it and then I thought
Yeah.
I pushed mute and I missed
Yeah.
it. Sorry.
Who should it be but Michael? And Michael and Pike are able to speak. They didn't want to send Michael didn't want to send a subspace communication because he also thinks that that Section 31 is following, is like monitoring them. And she tells him first and foremost that Spike is Spike. That's Spike. Pike and Spock. She tells him first and foremost that Spock is innocent and that there was Terran tech on Section 31 when she brought Spock in. Now it's going to become a problem. All I can think is Pike.
Cornwall and Spike.
Yeah, Cornwall and Spike. Great. Now that's a spinoff I'd watch. There was the Terran tech they were using. Strange new wolds. They were going to try to rip his mind apart. Yeah. And then Spock comes into the conversation and he says that they must follow the Red Angel's design. He's able to remember the future because of what the Red Angel communicated to him, and that Discovery must come to Talos immediately for Spock and Michael and pick them up because they have things to do, if memory serves. Future memory. Number 2. All right. Stamets and Hugh, meanwhile, are sort of talking about after the fight and everything in the mess hall together. And Hugh basically says, listen, I think we should both move on. I don't think this is working. I think you need to let me go because I don't want to be forced into a relationship until I need to organically begin to feel things. And they sort of agree to do that. And then Stamets is called to engineering because they're going to try to jump to Talos 4. Only when they try to jump, spore drive doesn't work. And it turns out that these spores and the spore drive itself were deliberately corrupted. As they're communicating this to the bridge, Tyler arrives and he's like, hey, what's going on? What's going on with the spore drive? And they're like, I don't know, Tyler. Spore drive's not working. Someone sabotaged that. And also someone's been sending secret messages through subspace off our thing. And he's like, oh, it wasn't me. And the Saru's like, oh no, because it looks like whoever did it was using your passcode or whatever.
Who'd be stupid enough to do that though?
You know what? I agree. I think it's in the heat of the moment and they were in a rush. But to be safe, they were like, listen, and I think Pike sort of says that. He says, like, I can't trust you now. We're going to confine you to quarters because evidence points to you, and you're a very likely suspect. But who else could they have suspected? They don't know about the flashing red dots in Ariam's eyes like we do because we've seen them once before. Okay, so their plan is to head to since they can't use the spore drive, they will head at warp towards Starbase 11, saying they need repairs. And then as they get close to Starbase 11, which is like 2 light years away from Talos, they will, as Pike says it, change course and run, quote, silent, whatever that means when you have a giant warp engine. Okay. And just as they decide to do that, we get another close-up of Ariam's eyes and the 3 red dots. Blink, blink, blink again in her eyes. Back on Talos, they've got all the information they need to give to Michael, but they need their final payment, which is the memory of what Michael did to Spock in order to hurt him, in order to get him to keep away from her, because he thought she was saving him from the logic extremists. And so we get our final flashback of the episode. Yes, it's the night Michael's running away and Spock is trying to stop her. And he says, no, we should do this as a family. You can't run away. And she says, I got to protect the family. And he says, fine, well, then I'll go with you. And she says, I don't want you to go with me. And then she turns around and she has to say, I don't want you to be in my family. I don't want you to be in my life. We're not brother and sister. You're a Vulcan. You're incapable of the feeling of love. You're not worth my time. And finally, she calls him like a filthy half-breed or something like that. Very sad. And then they're both crying, but she's walking away pretending that she meant it, and he's crying.
How adorable was Mini Spock?
He's so adorbs. So adorbs.
He was so cute, and he was so hurt. He just wanted to cuddle him.
Yeah. Mini Spock with his bowl cut. So cute.
It was super cute.
It was super cute. Okay. So they come out of that memory and Michael's kind of tearing up and Spock is all, Spocky. you know? And she apologizes and stuff, but Spock is really not hearing it. She says, like, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to turn off your humanity. He says, my humanity was a weakness. He says, your humanity was beautiful. And she says she was sorry. And then Spock says, no, you were a catalyst. You showed me that I needed to contain my humanity and become the logical person that I am. And you drove me to become exceptional. And so, in a way, this damage led to Spock's exceptionalism, but also irreparably damaged his relationship to his humanity. I hope that one day he will find a human friend that will allow him to explore that human side of him. But we'll never know what happens in
We'll
Spock's
never
future.
know.
We'll never know. But one parting awful jab he gives to Michael, and as a sibling myself, this is hurtful. He says, it was foolish to idolize you, and I regret it deeply. That's a hurtful thing to say to an older
It was
sibling.
such a painful exchange, that whole
Yeah,
thing.
it was hard to watch every time.
And
Even
you
when I
just
was
want
taking
it to be
notes.
repaired. You were watching it
Yeah,
going, oh, please, can this,
yeah. You're like, Spock, one day you will give up your life for your best friend. Okay, so Discovery is close, but they're being followed by Leland's ship. And so it's like a race to get to Talos 5. Leland tries to get Pike to stand down by sending him a message, and Pike is like, no, forget that noise. He drops out of warp. He tries to lock in on Michael and Spock. I'm going to get these names right, or heaven help me. Michael and Spock. And then Section 31's ship, the NCIA 93, also drops out of warp, and they also lock on Spock and Michael's signatures. And so now they're both trying to beam up these two people at the same time. And Leland gets back on the horn and he says, listen, if you don't let them go, man, we're going to rip them apart atom by atom. You're going to destroy both of them. Is that what you want? Because I will do it. And in that moment,
they wouldn't do it, but they played chicken.
it was a game of chicken, but obviously they needed Spock alive. But I think Leland would have won if he had held out too. You know what I mean? Like, no, not Leland. I think Pike would have won because to Leland, the information was as dear to him as was the lives of the crew members to Pike. And I don't think he is as willing to go as far as Pike would have been to save his crew. Anyway, that's I don't know why I'm yelling at you about it. The point is,
Save it for Kapla Corner.
Save it for Kapla Corner. At that moment, Pike is visited once again by Vina, his own private sort of like hallucination. And she says, let them go. Let your friends go. It's better this way. This is the smart thing to do. And so Pike says, goodbye, Vina. Oh, she says, let us all go. Because, they can't be together because he can't be on the planet. I don't want to get into that again. So Pike comes back from his hallucination. He tells them, disengage the transporter beam. And Section 31 beams Michael and Spock aboard. And Leland says to Disco, well, I'm glad you followed our orders. I'll put that in my after-action report. Now report to Starbase 11 where you will wait for disciplinary action. Yeah. Like, just short of sticking his tongue out before signing off. And then they cut off the transmission, and Giorgio comes up to Leland and she says, don't you think it was surprising that Pike gave up so quickly? You would think someone who cared about his crew so dearly would have at least mouthed off a few times back and forth. He just kind of gave up. And Leland is so sort of self-important and self-absorbed. He's like, whatever. And I know what I'm doing. And listen up, Giorgio. This time I'll do the talking. At the same time, Disco, which is still around the planet, I think the idea is that the Section 31 ship has then just immediately jumps away and with like a rabid animal with their prize, and so they jump to warp and they go away. And meanwhile, Discovery detects a shuttle coming from the surface. Surprise. And the shuttle is not answering any hails or anything like that. And then Pike goes, no, they wouldn't want to give away their positions, bring it to the shuttle bay. And it turns out, yes, it was Michael and Spock on that shuttle. Meanwhile, back on the NCIA 93, Leland swaggers over to Michael and Spock. He's like, you tell me this, and what do you know about the blah, blah, blah? And he's like, it'll go better for you if you answer these questions, otherwise it'll get painful. And Michael says, oh, actually, I don't think so, sir. And he goes, what do you mean by that? And then, very cute moment, Michael says, say goodbye, Spock. And then Spock turns to Leland and says, goodbye, Spock. And they fade. They disappear. And Giorgio then reveals, she goes, "Oh, the Telosians and their ability to make illusions across space-time. Yeah, in my timeline, I destroyed them and all their stupid little things." And Leland's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" And she's like, "Oh, and miss out you having to explain this to the Admiralty? Not a chance." So Leland pays for his ego once more. Meanwhile, there's a somewhat joyous reunion between Spock and Captain Pike. Spock almost smiles. On the bridge, they return to the bridge, and nota bene, Arium is in the chair when they enter the bridge. She had the con. uh, and as they discuss what they're going to do now, Spock says, "As having been a fugitive, there's only one thing I know we can do, and that is to run." And then Pike says, "Okay." And Pike begins to address the crew. He's about to, I got my pen ready because I was like, oh, he's going to say some beautiful words. He says, "I can't ask any of you to make this choice, which is obviously to disobey a direct command." And Detmer interrupts him and says, "Course heading, sir." And then Tilly's like, "Yeah, it seems like we should be getting out of here like now." And then as he looks around, he sees the whole crew is with him. They're standing. And Michael says, "Sir, I think you've got the crew." And then Pike says, "Detmer, get us out of here." And Disco goes to warp. End of season 2, episode 8, if memory serves. And I hope you tracked all the memories and the servings that happened in there.
I lost track, but there seem to be about 3.
I'd say there's 3. There's probably more because that was just what I wrote. And I tossed the papers. I didn't like that. They went to the exact same place they always go, right behind me.
How do you like that?
I mean, I'll accept it. No real stats this episode, unfortunately.
That sucks.
There was one yellow alert across the 2 episodes. Yeah, go for it. Why not? Hit him with the yellow alert.
That's all we got.
Yeah, that's it. One yellow alert. Unfortunately, though, we have some exceptional quotes in this episode, so I think it's time for quotable moments.
Quotable moments.
Do you have any quotes you'd like to share before I go on and on as I always do?
I'll let you go on this time.
Okay. Well, one that I truly enjoyed, obviously, we both like the Mr. Tyler the Chair outranks the badge.
Yes.
I really like Stamets when he's trying to convince Tilly to help him transport to the shuttle in the middle of the time rift. He says, "Tilly, trust the math. More importantly, trust yourself. I wouldn't let just anyone beam me in and out of time." That's a sweet moment. And then at the end of that episode, another great line. You know what Pike is great at? He's great at taking someone else's line and turning it into something dope. That's kind of his thing. So Tyler says at the end of that episode 7, "Whether the Red Angel is here to end something or start something, one thing is for sure. We're in the middle of a fight for our future." And Pike says, "Always, Mr. Tyler. We're always in a fight for the future." That's pretty good. That's pretty good stuff. That's good stuff. That's good to remember today. You know what I mean? We're always in a fight for a future. And then the only thing I really pulled from episode 8, besides, I really enjoyed the "Say Goodnight, Spock" from George and Gracie or whatever, was I liked Saru's explanation of why he didn't stop the fight. When Pike asks him, he says, "The Starfleet manual offers no regulatory guidelines for interactions between humans with Klingons grafted to their bones and a ship's doctor returned from the dead." Anyway, that's fair,
true.
Right? Totally fair. He also says it with a weird, like, sarcastic tone that you've never heard from Saru before. He says, like, humans with Klingons grafted to their bones and a ship's doctor returned from the dead. It was, I don't know. I just like how he was being very Stametsy. I don't know. I liked it. It was very sarcastic. All right. Well, those were episodes 7 and 8 of season 2 of Star Trek. Should we get into the next time business?
We can do, unless you have some Kapla corner, which you would like to rant about.
No. I don't want to. I think we've all covered how I feel about these 2 episodes, but I think it's important to note that, and this is not Kapla. This is merely a thought. I'm really trying to keep my level head. That,
all right.
It's all about past, present, and future. I just like how they're underscoring that in these recent episodes.
Next time on Set Phasers.
Okay, so next time on Set Phasers, we will be covering episodes 9 and 10. We're coming into the home stretch here of season 2. Episode 9 is called Project Daedalus, and episode 10 is called, get ready for it, The Red Angel. So I think we're gonna get some clarity on this Red Angel business. Okay, well, listen, thank you for joining us on this Sunday night. If you enjoyed the program, you can catch us usually every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern on Facebook Live, or whenever you like as a podcast. Or we drop every Monday wherever podcasts come from. So if you see it in your podcast thing, please like and subscribe.
Indeed. And of course, we are on Facebook and Instagram at Set Phasers Podcast. Feel free to follow us and join in the conversation of all things Trek. And don't forget, what's the date today? Yes, next weekend, Sunday, 10/4.
Yes, 10/4.
We are doing our first Netflix watch party for our patrons only. So feel free to join our Patreon pledge, and you can watch a fun Star Trek episode with Aki and me.
That's right. That leads right into what a great segue, Steph, because if you do want to continue our continuing mission, if you want to support it, you can discover what Discovery has in store for us by supporting us on Patreon. You can patronize us. We can take it. Go to patreon.com/setphasers, and you too can be part of the nerd party on 10/4 when we watch Star Trek together and talk about all the uniforms and the choices and the quotes. And
we love all that nerd shit. It's our jam.
We're so into it. Okay.
It's totally our jam. Well, until next time, I am Steph Mans.
And I am Aki Burmese, and this has been Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
Computer. End program.